Hi there everyone. Today we are talking about something super useful in React, which is the context API. You know how sometimes you need to pass data from a parent component down to a child component and you end up passing props through bunch of components in between. Now that's called prop drilling and it can get messy fast. Let's walk through an example to clarify this. Imagine you have fetched some data in the app component which sits at the root of your application. Now if deeply nested component, say the grandchild component, needs to access this data, you typically pass it down through the parent and the child components as a props before it reaches to the grandchild component. Now this can get ugly as your app grows. Here is another visual representation. Now in this example, the profile component needs user data, but this data has to travel through the app component and the navigation component first, even though these intermediate components don't use the data themselves. So how do we clean this up? Now that's where the context API comes in handy. Now as you can see in this diagram, we have a context object that stores the data that will be accessed by multiple components. Now it contains the data fetched from some APIs or third-party services or just your local use state. Now before we access this context data in any component, we have to wrap all the components with this context provider. Now here, if we only need to access the data in navigation and the profile component, then we don't have to wrap the app component within the context provider. Just like this. Now, once you have wrapped the relevant components with the context provider, you can directly access the data in any component that consumes it. Now let's see this in action. Here we will use React.js to create the React app. So if you go to this getting started from the documentation and let's copy this code. Open your terminal and paste it. Now it will ask for the project name. Let's just write context-API and let's select React. For now, let's just use JavaScript and that's it. Now let's copy this command. It will change the directory to project directory and let's install all the dependencies. Now let's open this in VS Code. If you are using VS Code, you just have to write code and dot. Also, let's start the development server. Just write npm run dev and let's open this. For now, let's remove all the unnecessary code. Just write app. Let's remove this as well. Let's save this. And here it is. Now first, let's create components folder in the src folder. Now in this components folder, let's create navbar.jsx component. Now here I am using this extension called ES7 plus React Redux snippets. For that you just have to write RAFCE and it will create this component. Let's save this and import this component in this app.jsx file. Similarly, let's create the profile component, profile.jsx. Now we will import this profile component inside this navbar. So after the navbar, let's import the profile. So here is navbar and the profile component. So if you see the structure, the navbar component is in the app component and profile component is in the navbar component. Let me add some styles in this app component. Let's write main and add this styles. Let's remove this. All right, now let's add some style in the navbar as well. So open the navbar.jsx, and instead of this div, let's just write an AV, and instead of this navbar, let's write logo in the h1 tag. Let me paste some styles for this nav. Now this is just a basic CSS. Now as you can see, we have a navigation bar with the logo text and the profile component. Now what we want to do is, let's say first we will fetch the data for the user, and then we will display that user data instead of this profile text. So usually we fetch the data in the app component, then we pass on to the navigation bar, and then we will pass on to the profile. But instead of that, let's use the context API. Now for this user data, we will use this fake API for testing purposes. So let's try this. Now before all of this, we have to create the context. So let's create one folder called context. Inside this folder, let's create one file called useContext.jsx. Now to create context, you can use createContext from React. So just write export const useContext equal to createContext. Make sure to import this from React. By default, you can have any default value in here, such as user name and some data here, but let's just keep it null for now. So we have created the context that will manage our global state. Now let's create the provider. Let's just write user provider. Now this provider will have the children components, and then it will return the user contexts dot provider, and it will wrap the children components. Now this provider accepts the value, and in this value you can pass any data that you want to share between multiple components. So initially let's create one state to store the user data. Let's name it as a user and set user. Make sure you import useState from the React. Initially it will be null. Now let's create a function that fetches the user data from the JSON placeholder API. So let's write const fetch user data. It will be an async function. It accepts an ID, and let's add the response. Let's use await and fetch. Now let's see how we can use the JSON placeholder data. Now as mentioned here, let's just copy this one and paste it here. So instead of to-dos, we will use the users. So /1 is the ID. So instead of this, let's use backticks, paste this, and instead of 1, just add ID. Now this will give us the user data. So let's set the user state with this response. Now before this, let's log this as well. Now we will call this function once initially when the app loads. So we'll use the use effect. Let's pass ID as 1, and inside this value let's pass the user. So let me repeat again. So first we have created the context to store the global state, and then we have created this user provider by using useContext.provider that accepts the values. Here you can pass any value that this children elements can access. Let me just change this. And then we have created this fetch user data function that fetches the data from this JSON placeholder API, and we are setting this set user state. So it should pass the user data, the first user data in this user state. Let's save this and let's see how we can use this context and user provider. So let's go to the app.jsx. Now we want this data in the navbar. So let's wrap this navbar in the user provider. Let's save this and let's see how we can access this context. So inside this navbar, let's just write const data equal to, we will use context hook from React, and this hook will accept the user context that we have created. Let's log this data first. Let's save this and see if we can get the log. Here we are getting the promise. Now here, let's just add await. Now, as you can see, we are getting this user data, and in this navbar as well. Now we don't have to use this in the navbar because we want this in the profile. So let's just paste it here. Make sure you import the useContext hook and user context. Now instead of data, let's deconstruct this to user and just log this. And here is the profile data. So instead of this profile text, let's use the username. Now first we will put a condition. If user is not null, then we will return one span and write user.name. Else we will return one span that says to login. Let's save this. And here is the username. So if I don't call this function, then it will display login. Let's just make it a bit bold. Now let's create another component that displays all the user details right here after this navbar. So inside the components, create user details .jsx. Let's get the user data from the context. Just copy this and paste it right here. So same as we did for the profile, let's write one condition. If there is a user, then we will return one section, and in this section we will add user details. Else we will return span tag that says user not found. Now in the user details, let's add First, let's add the user ID. So just write user.id. Let's add few more paragraphs. Let's add name. So user.name, email, and a phone number. That's it. Now let's save this and let's import this user details in the app.js. Now make sure you import this user details component inside this user provider. Otherwise it won't be able to access the context, the user context. Let's save this. And we are getting the user details. So you can check this name. Now let's see if we change the user details from this component and see if also affect this profile component or not. So for that, let's go to the user context and let's pass this fetch user data function as well. Let's just save this and go to the user details. With the user, we will also use this fetch user data function. After this paragraph, let's create one button that says fetch another user, and on click we will use this fetch user data function and let's pass the ID. So just let's generate a random number between 1 to 10. So just write math dot floor, write math dot random, multiply it by 10 and plus 1. Let's save this and let's click here. So right now it is this Lieni. Let me click. Now, as you can see, the data is changed in here and in the profile as well. So basically, whenever any changes happen in the context, it will also happen in the components that have subscribed to that particular context. So if I click again, it has fetched the data for user ID 9. Let me just add some style for this user details. So in this section, just paste this. Let's save this. Now let's see how we can use multiple contexts. So let's create one context to change the theme of these components. So go to the context folder and create theme context.jsx. So first step is to create the context. So just write export const theme context and let's import the createContext from React. Initially, let's keep it null. Let's create the context provider. So just write theme provider that accepts the children and it returns the theme context dot provider and wraps the children components. Now for the value, let's create one use state. Let's name it as a theme and set theme. Initially, let's just add light theme. Let's create one function to toggle this theme state. So just write const toggle. Let's name it toggle theme, and this function will toggle this theme state. So first let's grab the previous theme state and then we will check if previous theme is equal to light, then we will set it to dark, else we will keep it to light. Now in the value, let's pass both the theme and the toggle theme function. So here first we have created the theme context, and then we have created the theme provider. So this is the global state of theme that we will share between different components. Let's copy this theme provider, go to the app, and let's wrap this theme provider component. Make sure you import it. Let's copy all this and paste it here. So first we have theme provider, and then we have user provider. Let's save this. So how we can access this theme state? Again, we will use the useContext hook. So in the navbar, let's grab the theme and toggle theme function, and let's use useContext from React. And here we will not pass the user context, but we will pass the theme context since it contains the theme state. So after this profile, let's create one button that says theme, and on click it should call this toggle theme function. Let's log this theme state. Now let's check this out. So initially it is light theme. If I click this again, it is a dark, and it is light. Now as you can see, we are getting two logs. It is because of this strict mode that is already enabled in the React. So as mentioned here, strict mode enables the following development only behaviors. Your components will re-render an extra time to find bugs caused by impure rendering. We can disable that in this main.jsx. Let's just remove this or just comment this out. It is better to have this in the development, but for now, let's not use this strict mode. Now, as you can see, we are getting just a single log. Now let's use this theme values. So in the background, let's cut this. We will use theme state if theme is equal to light. Let's use the white color, else we will use this dark color. Let's copy this and paste here. If theme is light, we will use this dark, else we will use the white. Let's save this. As you can see, right now the theme is light, so the text is black and the background is white. If I click again, it is dark. Now let's use this theme value in this user details component as well. So let's just copy this, go to the user details and paste right here. Make sure you import the theme context. We don't need the toggle theme, we just need this theme. And let's copy this background color and color and replace this. Let's see if it is working. Yes, it is working. So if I click theme, it will turn this to dark, to light. Now instead of this theme, we can also use the theme values in the navbar button. So right now it is light, it is dark now. So there are multiple ways you can use the context API and manage the state. Now there is one problem with the context API. If you use multiple contexts or use multiple state in a single context, then it will re-render the components that are using those state values. Let me explain this by an example. Now let's just create one counter dot JSX component. Now in this component, first let's create one context called count_context. Let's import createContext. I don't know why the auto import is not working. And let's create one context count provider. It will accept the child components. And it will return the count context dot provider and wraps the children components. Now for a value, let's use one use state and let's name it as count and set count. Initially it will be 0. Now let's use this count provider and count context. So first let's create one function. So just write export default function counter. Now this function will display the count values and count title and the button to increase the counter. But first let's wrap this with the count provider so that it can access the count state. Now here let's create 3 components separately. So first we will create the count title. It is just a static component that returns h1 that says counter title. Also let's log this. This is count title component. Similarly, let's create another component that displays the count values. Just name it as count display. Now this will display the count values from the count provider. So make sure to pass this value first. Let's pass count and set count. Now to get the count value, we will use the useContext hook. So let's deconstruct the count and set count. Actually, we won't be needing the set count. We just need the count. useContext, and here we will pass the count context. Let's use this. So this function will display this title and count display will display the total counts. Now why I'm creating this individual component is to show you which components re-renders whenever we change this count state. Let's create the last component that will increase the counter. So just write counter button. This will use the button element. Just write increase. Let's add the set count as well. Now this is count display and this is counter button component. In the on click of button, let's use the set count. Write count plus 1. Now let's display all this component. So in this counter button, we will use both of this, count display and count title. Just use the React fragments. First we will display the count title, and then we will display the count display. And let's import this counter button in here. Let's render this counter in the app.jsx. Let's comment this out and import the counter component. Now if you see the logs, first it will render this counter button, then it will render the counter title, and then it will render the count display. So if I click on this button, it is increasing the counts, but if you see, it again re-rendering all the components. Even the count title, which is not even using the count state, still it is re-rendering this count title component. So how we can stop this? Now to stop this, either you can directly remove the count title and render it separately. Now it should not re-render the count title, or you can use the React memo. So as mentioned in the documentation, memo lets you skip re-rendering a component when its props are unchanged. So in our case, the count title doesn't even contain the props, and even it does contain the props. If the prop is not changing, then it will not re-render this component. So let's see how we can use this memo. Let's just copy this and paste it right here. Let's change this to memoize count title and pass the count title component. Make sure you import this memo from React, and let's use this instead of this count title. Let's save this. So initially it will render all three components, and when I click on this button, it will only render the counter button and count display. So this is how you can solve the problem of this re-rendering using the React memo. So it can only render the components that are subscribed to this values and are using these values, not like this static count title component. Let me explain all this again. Initially, we have created one count context using createContext. Then we have created the count provider that uses this useState. And then we have passed this state and set state function and the value of this count context provider, which wraps this children components. And then we have wrapped the counter function. And then we have used this count provider in the counter component, which wraps this counter button component. Now this counter button components uses the set count and count values to increase the counter, and also it renders the count display and count title component. So count display uses this count, so it is okay if this renders, since it needs the new values of this count, but it is not okay to re-render this because it is not using any values. It is just a static component. So now to reduce the re-rendering of this, we have used the memo. There is another library that helps us in the complex state management, and it's called Redux. Usually people have a question on when to use Context API and when to use the Redux. Use React Context API for simple localized state management where the state is not frequently changing and you don't want to persist this state for the next user session. Or use Redux for complex state management needs, especially in larger applications where the benefits of its structured state management outweigh the extra setup. So there is one more library that help us in state management that's gaining the popularity, which is the React Recoil. It is a state management library for React that aims to provide the simplicity of Context API with the power and performance of Redux. Now, if you are interested in learning more about React Recoil, let me know in the comments and I'll create in-depth tutorial on this topic based on your feedback. So that's the end of this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful, and if you did, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with others who might benefit, and don't forget to subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.